Trauma. People can have many reactions to it. They can become angry and violent, cold and distant, childlike, and oddly hypersexual. Everyone reacts differently. What comes down to it, things such as trauma can influence and create an aesthetic that vents these emotions and feelings that come forth from certain traumas, specifically the traumas of patriarchal gaze. There are two aesthetics I will be giving examples of that show this in a way I do not see in many other aesthetics, or at least not quite in the same way. I will start with one that everyone has heard of at some point or at least seen once. Lolita, specifically Lolita fashion. Not to be confused with lolly fashion, that is very different. Lolly basically is that weird childlike thing that looks like a 12-year-old. It's usually pretty common in anime. Yeah, no, it's not lolly. Lolicon and Lolita are very different. This aesthetic originated in Japan, specifically, and tends to take the form of poofy dresses and petticoats with laces, bows, silks, and delicate cottons, showing an almost childlike innocence on an adult, but a worryingly odd sexuality on someone younger. Then we go into the nymphette. A nymphette, as described by the main character of Humbert Humbert in the book Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, a nymphette is this. Between the ages of 9 and 14, there occur maidens who, to certain bewitched travelers, twice or many times older than they, reveal their true nature, which is not human, but nymphic, that is, demonic. And these chosen creatures I propose to designate as nymphets. Okay, pardon me while I squidge out in disgust at this creep. This character, with perfectly silly name, sees this as the boundaries for the true nymphette. To break the aesthetics down altogether, I believe breaking down the key attributes and reasoning for the looks is in order so we can make the comparison and show the relationships to the book Lolita and other such things like femininity and its views in the patriarchal eye as well. Lolita fashion is about innocence, but also perfection. Having your hair perfectly styled, cleaned, and brushed. Your makeup done just so as to be unblemished and doll-like. A good comparison would be Victorian porcelain dolls, which also were pretty popular in the 80s and 90s apparently, which was a fun thing to learn recently. Their hair done in beautiful rag curls, their eyes big and their cheeks pink with pale, almost translucent white skin. There are many subgenres to Lolita fashion, but the most common and well-known are these three categories. Classic, Sweet, and Gothic Lolita. Classic Lolita is a bit more historically accurate with muted colors such as cornflower blue and wine red, along with browns and grays. This subclass is seen as more elegant than cute when it comes down to it, with natural-based makeup. One could say it goes a little bit into cottagecore even when thought about it enough. Next, we have Sweet Lolita. Likely the most popular form of it, this one is much more frilly, girly, and pink. There's a lot of clash between coquette and Lolita in the sweet category. But there are other colors that go with this one too, such as light blues and whites. One could argue this substyle is much more girly with its whimsical, more child appearance for both its makeup and clothes. Also, there's quite a lot more glitter to this one too. Personally, I don't like glitter that much. I consider it to be raver scabies because once it clings to you, it never goes away. Anyways, next we have Gothic Lolita. Personally, I really like this one. This one is dark and almost tragically romantic in its look. A good example of how I see it, at least, is like a child turned vampire, unable to age and forever stuck in youth. But that's up for interpretation. Anyways, everything can go with black pretty much when it comes to this one, showing more Gothic architecture motifs. This aesthetic is about drama, and I am all for it. You also don't have to listen to goth music to be Gothic Lolita, so there's a plus if you don't know a lot of Gothic music. Also, it's a little less about perfection as well, and more about experimentation. There's also Ouija Lolita, but that one is not as common. It's basically a masculine version of Lolita. A good example of Ouija fashion can look like CL Phantom Hive from Black Butler, or at least that's the best example I could get. But it is not as commonly known as the effeminate version of Lolita. Lolita fashion does seem to have a very big flaw, though. This flaw being its obsession with perfection. The requirement for perfectly clean, beautiful natural hair and flawless makeup, to be thin, pale, and hairless while not seeming below your means. It is a beautiful aesthetic, with its want for utter sexlessness and innocent perfection. But even perfection can have its fatal deficiencies. However, I will give Lolita Fashion this. It does not really have anything to do with the book of the same name. The next aesthetic, though, does, and is much more easily compared to the book. Coquette is a fairly more complex aesthetic compared to Lolita. It is still very pink and frilly and effeminate, but much more sexual than Lolita is. It is fairly popular among teenage girls, and even has a key musical artist to it, specifically Lana Del Rey. Very good artist, by the way. Check her out. Great music. It's very nice to listen to. Her music describes the loss of innocence, yet desire for its return. This aesthetic is fairly inspired by a particular movie, however. Lolita 1998. Terrible movie. I really don't like that movie. It's not a bad movie, however, that makes it worse because of what is in it. Personally, I think it influenced a lot of teenage girls with really serious daddy issues. The aesthetic was originally called Nymphette, but later changed to Coquette because it started on 2010's Tumblr, and Nymphette was under a lot of different tagging, and so they decided to kind of do a purge and change the name so it wasn't as creepy, but the Nymphette is still kind of at its core. The word coquette has changed its meaning over the years. As it says on the website, etymololine.com, which will be in the description below, depending on the spelling of coquette, means a woman who endeavors to gain the admiration of men through flirting. This word originated in the 1610s, but became more popular in the 1660s. It is a French word that at its base means, try not to laugh, wanton cock, as in rooster. Get your head out of the gutter. They used to call roosters that. Coquette, which in this case spelled very differently as C-O-Q-U-E-T, unlike the other coquette regarding a woman, is spelled C-O-Q-U-E-T-T-E, is originally referred to both men and women who were amorously flirtatious and wanted to be seen as romantically attractive because of their vanity. This word has changed over the centuries to refer more to women than men. The coquette aesthetic, in the second spelling I gave a second ago, originated in the 2010s Tumblr era, as I said, had a very wide tagging system, and led to a lot of creepy people. Unfortunately, I don't think I need to say what kind of creepers. I think we all know. If it has to be said. It has the same words as PDF file, so it leads to some issues when it comes to the whole origins. This aesthetic, in comparison to Lolita, tends to remind me more of the book and the very badly adapted movie, mostly because they made the girl a teenager rather than a 12-year-old. That doesn't make it better. I mostly just hate that it's live action. Anyways, back to Coquette. It is a very hyper-feminine aesthetic with a lot of pinks and whites, but in a more Western styled. Bit less Rococo, unlike Lolita. I've noticed some Rococo fashions in there. A lot of poofy dresses, but more A-line based, with pinks and flowers and bows and all that. But it's also a bit more simple. There are also a lot of red fruits, which tend to symbolize passion in this aesthetic, like strawberries, apples, cherries. Cherries can imply a lot of things, but the cherries are the most popular fruit in there, but also pomegranates too. This aesthetic did start out much more sexual, but has become more a reclamation of girlhood over the recent years. It tends to have some similarities to cottagecore in that it's girls LARPing the 1950s and Victorian eras, but more so the 1950s and 60s. There are a lot of subgenres to this aesthetic, specifically 16, which is a lot. Not even Lolita had that many. There were like little subgenres, but these ones are like more evenly spaced. But we're gonna work with the first three I thought were the most important, and that will be Nymphette, Dollette, and Waif. Nymphette takes the most inspiration from the movie Lolita, which means a lot of reds and pinks with 1950s Squirrel Girl vibes and vintage Americana. This aesthetic is most influenced by Lana Del Rey, specifically her Burn to Die album, and, well, if you've seen the movie, I'll show some images here of what it looks like. The actress did an excellent job, I will give her that, but I feel really bad for her. I have some other complaints and opinions about the movie I will give later. Next we have Dollette. Very pretty sounding name. It also depicts thin girls with a delicately elegant feminine allure. Am I the only one who thinks that sounds slightly ominous? which these girls are in vintage clothes with a sort of modern day twist, also thin to the point of being concerning, like anorexic levels. This aesthetic is pretty popular in TikTok and Pinterest, with Audrey Hepburn as a part of the inspiration, as well as Black Swan, which is a very good movie, by the way. You should definitely watch it if you have the chance. There's also a lot more soft pinks and lace to this one, with clothing often from Depop. Next, we have Waif. Waif, when it comes to this aesthetic, it's much more sexual than the other two, often depicting a sort of heroin chic to its look. As said in the aesthetic wiki, because I cannot top what it says there, it is an expression of their mental illness. In addition to the glamour of independent and precocious lives of parties, money, and influence, there are multiple references to drug use, depression, eating disorders, and the desire to gain male attention from their looks. It most certainly shows the darker side of coquette. It's not all doom and gloom, though. There are people who blog their coquette experience in a way much more innocent and less internally upsetting. Like Lizzie Lath, for example, or the Tumblr blogger of the same name, which is coquette, and I will put it underneath the link below. Anyways, next we have the overlap. Coquette and Lolita do have a lot of overlap, but it is not one-to-one. There is such a thing as coquette Lolita, which is basically just a very, very pink, girlish Lolita, but it's kind of its own thing. Both are influenced by a want to reclaim girlhood and accept traumas of your past, by accepting your present and enjoying life to the fullest, by accepting your femininity and who you were, working past the patriarchal views of femininity and reclaiming it for themselves. And I think there's something quite beautiful in that. Next, we have the Lolita in the description. So I was unable to finish Lolita so far. I only got to the part where Humbert and Charlotte Hayes got married, and they're at the lake, and she has really bad taste in men. I'm gonna say that now. That is my main complaint. Next, we have my opinion. When it comes to Lolita, this is my opinion of that movie, and if you are ever going to adapt the movie Lolita, do it animated. If it's animated, it'll be tasteful. Don't do it in a Western style. It'll make more sense. You don't have to age up the kid. That's the whole point of the book. What you do is you make it so it's animated and you're not hurting anybody, and you still can show who it's for, and it can still be rated R, because animation is not just for kids. And if it's in Lolita, there are ways of making a movie about this without it going so creepy and being so messed up. It's so hard on the child actor. Even if they're a 15-year-old, it's still messed up. It's not exactly nice seeing a child get abused on screen, thank you. This movie, I will give it this. It's well acted. It's well shot. The score is very good. The outfitry, they did an amazing job on. But I cannot bring myself to ever properly like this movie, considering the context and how much they butchered it. Yeah, that's my opinion. Anyways, when it comes to these two aesthetics, there are a lot of views people have, and some of them are fair, some of them I think require a bit more thought to them. I don't like Depop. Screw you, Depop. You're part of the reason for overconsumption and why Salvation Army became a dumping ground rather than a place for people who actually needed proper clothing. But anyways, besides the point, okay, pausing to think about my life choices. Classically, gonna need to edit that out. There will be so many boopers, I apologize. Boop. With muted colors, such as cornflower blue and wine red. Wine and wine red. There we go. Along with browse gray. One could say it goes a little bit into cottagecore, even when thought about it enough. I'm bad at reading. This sentence, showing more does not have the requirement for being perfectly clean and having beautiful hair. Okay, I am cutting out that bit. Fuck that bit. Okay. With its want for utter sexless